Now, first of all, the breaking news, as you've heard, about potentially that fight between Joshua and Miller being cancelled. How you've reacting as a boxing fan yourself?
Well, I just heard it when I got to the gym this morning. I can't believe it. The biggest night of your life, biggest fight of your career, and you get tested positive for a banned substance. It baffles me.
When you see boxers at the top level concern themselves with these sort of issues, especially this close to a massive fight, I mean, does that not concern you as a professional? Now, first of all, the breaking news, as you've heard, about potentially that fight between...
Honest with you, don't get me wrong, like he's been worth it all the way. But what he has done, to be quite honest with you, is absolutely disgusting. And I always hope, and I always want to give athletes the benefit of the doubt, to say, okay, you took something, someone gave you something to take, or you didn't know what you were taking. But do you know what is the absolute liberty about all of this? Is the way that he, after he failed that test on Monday, texts me, texts you, to say, I swear I've not taken anything. This is sabotage. This is just a system against me. Fuck off. It's an absolute, and you know what, it makes me sick that someone would go to those lengths in a fight. People have died in the ring, and you're talking about Anthony Joshua, you're talking about someone, this guy has tried to get such an edge, and it's not just an edge of a little something, this is the whole hog. This is a man that is so, I've given him quite a few opportunities. I don't need to save money. I want to put on good fights. So that was a good fight for the zone. So I'm disappointed. But what is the point in signing up for drug testing if when you fail, everyone just goes, oh, don't worry about it, just let him fight, Yeah. So, and the argument of, well, it's all right with UKAD is totally irrelevant. You've signed drug testing with VADA, the best testing agency, in my opinion, in the sport.
Right. Oh. That's a good start, isn't it? I'm not even talking into the mic. Let's try that again. Right, can you hear me? Can you do a quick sound check? I need to do my legal disclaimers very, very quickly. Welcome. I do not want to be here, so this is going to be a very, very, very quick episode. I do not want to be here. I do not want to be doing this episode. Let's start with the quick sound check. Can you hear me loudly and clearly? Right, you can hear me loudly and clearly. Press 1 if you agree with me that I have been right when I have said British boxing is an absolute clown show and a disgrace. How long have I been saying that for? How many years and months have I been saying British boxing is an absolute disgrace and a clown show? Okay, right. So we're all in agreement about that, right? What's transpired in the last couple of hours is so cringeworthy, right? It's so utterly cringeworthy, right? Look at this. Even Domino's Pizza are taking the piss out of British boxing. Do you know what I mean? Like, can you see what an easy target British boxing is? Look at this. Even Domino's Pizza are jumping in now and taking the piss. Introducing the Conor Benn special. The picture tells you all you need to know. That is the official Domino's Pizza UK account jumping in on this absolute shit show of a shit fest with shit sauce and all kinds of shit toppings on top. It's embarrassing, isn't it? I'll be honest with you, I don't even want to be here, so I want to make this very, very quick. Let's do the disclaimer. Very, very quickly, for all of the morons that are listening to this show that claim they hate the show but listen to every single episode. Ultra Tech, what about Tyson Fury? Right. Tyson Fury's case was concluded. Tyson Fury's case was concluded about 5, 6, 7 years ago. He was given a backdated 2-year ban. This case is currently not concluded. That's why we're talking about this case at the moment and not Tyson Fury. Me personally, I have never said that Tyson Fury is a clean athlete and that Conor Benn is not a clean athlete. So for anybody who's going to come in today, Ultra, what about Tyson Fury? That's why we're talking about this case. We're talking about this case because the Tyson Fury case is no longer under investigation. He was given a backdated ban for the best part of 2 years. All right. At the minute, this Conor Benn investigation is currently ongoing. There's a British Boxing Board of Control / UCAN investigation that is currently ongoing. 1 second. Someone's saying I'm muted, but I'm not. Right. So let me just clear that. Right. Second disclaimer, quickly, if you don't mind. All right. Second disclaimer. Ultra Tech. What about Tete? What about this is exactly the same as Tete? No, it's not the same as the Solane Tete case. The reason why it's not the same as the Solane Tete case is because, as per, right, statement from Queensberry Promotions here, all right, Queensberry Promotions, at this time, Queensberry, who promoted the show, has not been formally notified of any issue by UCAD, nor indeed by the British Boxing Board of Control. Quite simply, when Zolane Tete failed a test, the British Boxing Board of Control were never notified, and that's because UCAD never notified them. So, a completely different situation. We are not doing... we're not looking at the case of the Conor Benn case, where the British Boxing Board of Control knew that a fighter had an adverse finding in a doping test weeks and months before he was about to go into a fight against a weight-drained opponent. We're not dealing with a situation where the promoters knew that one of the fighters involved in a fight had failed multiple or had multiple adverse findings in the run-up to a fight where an opponent was draining themselves down to 157 pounds to try and make weight. Okay, so quite simply, the difference between this case and the Tete case is that the BBOB, the British Boxing Board of Control, were never ever notified, and as such, Queensberry were never notified, aka they had no idea until after the fight took place. So just gonna get that out of the way. Why are we not talking about Tete? Why are we not talking about Tete? The reason the media aren't talking about Tete is it's because it's a completely different case. Now let's talk about this case. Let's talk about this case, the case of Conor Benn and his adverse findings. The reason why people are so interested in this case, okay, is not because we're shocked, right, that a boxer has tested positive for a performance-enhancing substance, right? I don't know anybody who watches this channel that is really shocked about that, right? We're not shocked that Conor Benn has tested positive or has allegedly tested positive on multiple occasions for a performance-enhancing drug, okay? That's not the argument. The argument, and what we're interested in this case, is the fact that certain people, the British Boxing Board of Control, the promotions that were involved, had prior knowledge. Yeah, they had prior knowledge that a fighter was about to step in the ring, having had multiple adverse findings. Okay, and it looks like, based on all the evidence I've seen so far, certain parties sought to make sure that this fight took place, despite knowing, okay, that one of the fighters had multiple adverse findings. So that's the reason why we're interested in this. We're interested in the dynamic between the British Boxing Board of Control, the promoters, the fighter, the WBC, because it looks like certain parties have known for months. It seems like since July of 2022, right? Certain people have known that an individual has had, right, clomiphene shown in one of his urine samples. And yet, right, that individual was about 24 hours away from stepping in the ring with a weight-drained opponent on UK shores. And we all like to know how the fuck that was able to happen. So, with that being said, now let me get to the meat and drink and potatoes of this show. Let me get my notes up. I'm not going to read you the full WBC ruling, okay, re Conor Benn. But what I do have next to me are some notes that I'm going to read to you. So, in news that is absolutely unsurprising to nobody, okay, nobody, the WBC have accepted Conor Benn's explanation of why he had why he had an adverse finding for a test that I believe was taken on around about the 25th of July. The date is noted in here. And I've completely sort of bottled it, so I'll have to find him. There you go. It's a sample that was collected from him on July the 25th, 2022. Note that Mr. Benn has more than one adverse finding. This statement regarding a failed test only seems to make reference to one of the failed tests from July the 25th, 2022. Of course, we know that there are more than one adverse findings, yeah? There are more than one adverse findings in tests, yeah, in 2022 involving this individual. So let me just make this clear. This statement, okay, is only tackling one test. And that was the test that was taken on the 25th of July, 2022. Now, let's just get to the first part of it first and foremost. What does this WBC ruling mean? First and foremost, I'm not going to put too much blame on the WBC, okay? Because the WBC, and we'll look at the British Boxing Board of Control's statement in just a second, okay? The WBC is just a sanctioning body. They're not a governing body. All they can do is decide whether Conor Benn is part of the rankings or not part of the rankings. They can't ban him from British boxing. They can't prohibit him from fighting, okay? So they're pretty much toothless, okay? And as a result, yeah, big question marks would have to be asked about the nature of their investigation, yeah, into this Conor Benn situation and just how thorough their investigation actually was. More on that in a second. But I think it's important to note here that we don't sort of, put too much pressure on the WBC, because the real pressure should be on the British Boxing Board of Control and UKAD, okay, because they are the governing body and they are the body who have the power to decide whether he's fit to box or not fit to box. All the WBC can do is decide whether he's fit to be in the rankings or not. However, the bad thing about this WBC ruling, in my opinion, okay, is it now basically states, right, that the WBC are interested in proving intention. All right. So the WBC have set a precedent here for me that if they can't prove, okay, that you knowingly or intentionally took the substance, okay, that was found in your system during a test, okay, then there aren't going to be any really existential consequences. Press 1 if you agree with me, press 2 if you disagree with me. Because to me, what's the fucking point in the WBC running a clean boxing program, okay, if somebody fails multiple fucking tests or somebody has multiple adverse findings, all right? Lawyers, if you're listening, all right, if he hasn't failed a test and it's an adverse finding, I take it back, all right? So I will change my language, right? But what is the point in the WBC having, right, a clean boxing program if, right, you can flag for adverse findings multiple times in the space of 6 months, all right? Multiple times in a space of 6 months. But if the WBC can't prove that you knowingly or intentionally ingested the substance, then no real serious action takes place. Can you see the problem here? Because really, intention is very, very hard to prove, isn't it? Intention is extremely, extremely hard to prove. That's the reason why the World Anti-Doping Agency Code says we don't have to prove anything. They put the responsibility on the fighter, and you need to focus in on that, right? The WADA, UKAD, they operate in a completely different code. As per their rules, they don't have to prove intention. Do you know how hard it is to prove intention? Do you know how hard it is to prove that someone knowingly ingested something? The way that the way that WADA works, the World Anti-Doping Agency works, is you are responsible for what is in your system. That's why we played a video of Conor Benn, right? In this video, specifically saying about Jarrell Miller, you are responsible for what's in your system. Check your supplements. You've heard Conor Benn himself say it, right, in this video that we played at the beginning of the episode, because he's aware there is some kind of, I believe the term is strict liability. So that's very interesting, right? Right, that's very interesting. If the WBC are going to go down the road of, from now on, anybody who flags up, yeah, in a clean boxing program test, we have to be able to prove that they knowingly or intentionally took the substance before taking any serious action, then what fucking action is going to be taken? Press 1 if you agree with me, press 2 if you disagree with me. Am I losing you so far? Or am I talking rubbish? Let me know. Sorry, I'm trying to be as specific as I can be. It's a bit of a legal minefield, this case, so I've got to be very, very careful what I say. Richard says, number 1, complete piss take. Putting the burden on testers to prove that the athlete intended to take the shit that they tested positive for. Absolutely mental. For me, WBC have set a ridiculous precedent here. Because, listen, if I do a WBC clean boxing program test and I fail, from now on, right, every time I fail for whatever drug, They're going to have to prove to me that I intentionally took it. The presence of that substance being in my system, as far as I'm concerned, is now no longer enough for the WBC to remove me from the rankings. So if I get caught with fucking 6 tons of fucking anabolic steroids in my system, the WBC better get their legal experts and better get their nutritionist experts online right now to prove that I somehow intentionally and knowingly took it. What does intentionally and knowingly mean? Does that mean that if I get found with 6 tons of steroids in my system, right, and I was apparently spiked by somebody, right? I was apparently spiked by somebody, or somebody slipped it in my food. Does that mean that, you know, I just get returned to the WBC rankings? Is that what that means? That's what it sounds like, isn't it? Because what? Well, I didn't knowingly take it, right? And it wasn't intentional. So the fact that I fought somebody, or the fact that I was training to go into a fight with somebody, and I had 6 tons of anabolic steroids in my system, you just let me back into the rankings willy-nilly, because you haven't proved that I knowingly, right, and intentionally took that substance. So I think you guys are with me on that, yeah? Right? So the WBC can only do what they can do. They can't ban Conor Benn. All they can do is decide whether they want him to come back into the rankings or not. But I just want to make that clear. The precedence that is being set here, from what I can see, is a quite laughable one. Now, here's the good bit now, right? You're going to love this bit. You're going to absolutely love this bit, right? Because this is the most interesting part, yeah? Right? You can find the most interesting part of this WBC ruling, because what it shows you, and here's the key here, this WBC ruling gives you lots of little clues, and what this clue tells you is that Conor Benn and his lawyers appear to have changed argument. What does that mean? It appears that Conor Benn and his lawyers appear to have come up with one explanation for reasons why they originally they originally had adverse findings. And then when that explanation was not accepted by the WBC, they then pivoted and come up with a completely different explanation for the reasons why he had adverse findings in his samples. Listen to this. This is incredible, right? Mr. Benn denied at all times the intentional or knowing ingestion of any banned substances, as we've discussed before. Listen, the way that other drug testing, the way that bodies like the World Anti-Doping Agency work is, they don't have to prove anything. But anyway, his defense against the adverse finding centered on allegations of potential laboratory analysis failures and irregularities in connection with the analysis of his samples and of the results of the samples testing. Listen to this. His defense against the adverse finding, this is finding number 1, centered on allegations of potential laboratory analysis failures and irregularities in connection with the analysis of his samples and of the results of the samples testing. Quite simply, the original argument that was given was that there was contamination in a laboratory. Press 7 if you're following what I'm saying, and press 8 if you have no idea where I'm going with this. Can you see? So it looks like argument number 1 that was presented to the WBC, the first argument was, oh, there must be some form of contamination that's happened in the laboratory. Listen to this. The WBC consulted several experts in anti-doping laboratory analysis, including an expert consultant with over 30 years experience in WADA and IOC accredited laboratory settings. Listen, the WBC concluded that there was absolutely no fault attributable to the laboratory that analysed Mr. Benn's samples. Further, the WBC reaffirms the unquestionable integrity of VADA and the sample collection agencies and laboratories which services VADA uses in connection with the WBC clean boxing program. So why is this quite significant? What does this mean? So this tells me, and let me make this clear. Richard, let me know if I'm okay to say this. The following is my opinion, okay? The following is my opinion, which I'm entitled to. So lawyers, please don't sue me for saying this, right? It looks to me like the original explanation from Conor Benn and his lawyers is they tried to accuse VADA of contaminating his samples. Now, this is the reason why we played Eddie Hearn telling you that VADA is the gold standard of testing. See, Eddie Hearn sat there and told you VADA was the gold standard of testing, right? It seems like for the last 6 months, right, while he's been in the past telling you that VADA is the gold standard of testing, he is publicly backing a fighter that is questioning the integrity of VADA. Press 9 if you're following me. Press 9 if you can see the hypocrisy in that, and press 10 if you can't. He's come on video and he's documented this saying VADA is the gold standard of testing, right? He is the gold standard of testing. In fact, if you look here at some of the stuff he's been saying about this evidence, Eddie Hearn, Conor Benn has info that will give people sleepless nights. Can you see? Eddie Hearn has backed recent comments that the report into Conor Benn's failed doping tests has some in the sport worried. So Eddie Hearn's backed Conor Benn. He's backed Conor Benn. He's clearly been privy to some of this evidence that's been provided in the documentation that's been sent to the WBC, and he's backed it. And what are some of that evidence in the documentation that's gone to the WBC said? It's basically accusing fucking VADA of not doing their job properly. Richard, are you there? If I'm okay to say that, Richard, please let me know. Or George C, one of my legal lawyers. Am I okay to say that? That's what it looks like from seeing this. It looks like the man who once claimed that VADA was the gold standard seems to have backed a fighter who one of his main arguments against why he tested for an adverse finding is that VADA are incompetent. That's what it looks like to me. To the point where the WBC had to consult experts. The WBC had to consult experts and bring in experts. And obviously, as we said on the previous show, when we first learnt that they were going to go down the contamination route, we said, yeah, think about the can of worms it would open. Think about the can of worms it would open, right? If that ruling stood, that the WBC accepted that somehow his sample, was contaminated in the VADA laboratory. I mean, that would be the credibility of VADA would be gone overnight. So what it seems like here is, right, it's interesting. It seems like the WBC operates some kind of 3 strikes and you're out policy, don't they? What do you think, right? It seems like the WBC offers some kind of 3 strikes and you're out policy. Here's how it seems to me, right? You have an adverse finding in a test. The WBC give you a chance to explain, right, why you had an adverse finding in that test. You give an explanation to the WBC over why you failed that test. The WBC come back to you and say, no, that explanation is complete bullshit. Contamination in the VADA laboratory. At which point, you then have the rights to go back and come up with another fucking bullshit explanation. Does that make sense? Press 1 if you're with me, press 2 if you... How many bites of the cherry do you get at this? That's the part I'm trying to explain. I'm fucking stupid. I thought it went like this. What's your explanation for this adverse finding? Oh, it must have been a contaminated test. Nah, the tests weren't contaminated. That's it. Right, now we're ruling. But it seems like there's some kind of completely different operation, innit? It seems like it's like you get unlimited chances. Like, what's your reasons for having an adverse finding in this test? Well, the fucking VADA laboratory contaminated it. No, that's bullshit. Give me another reason why you failed. Oh, I don't know. Maybe it was fucking chicken eggs. Okay, we'll accept that. You're back in the rankings. It's an absolute joke. That's it. Then says it's guess who. Again, this is I'm not making any accusations. This is just my opinion. But it does seem like he's had multiple bites of the cherry, doesn't it? It seems like, looking at this report, that his first argument, or one of his arguments, was to blame contamination. The WBC threw that out and gave him another chance. What else have you got for me? What other excuses have you got for me? It does worry you, doesn't it? It worries me that somebody who fails, or somebody who has an adverse finding in a test, right? In a WBC clean boxing programs test, right? It worries me that the WBC will just give them unlimited chances to come up with some form of explanation until one fits. Let me tell you, Conor Benn's lawyers don't fuck around. They've been working overtime. What? Let me ask you a quick question. We're going to talk about chicken eggs in a second. What would have happened if the WBC wouldn't have accepted chicken eggs? What? I mean, would they have just let him come up with another one? Nah, chicken eggs, we're not having that. We're not using that. So you need to come up with something else. How many chances do you get? I don't know. It's embarrassing. Anyway, now it's time, I think, to talk about the chicken eggs. Oh, before we start talking about the chicken eggs, let's talk about one other thing. This is hilarious. This case took 6 months. So it took the WBC 6 fucking months to get to the bottom of this. And I don't think it was the fault of the WBC, as we'll get onto it in a minute. But what do you think about that? The fact that somebody can have an adverse finding in July of 2022, and finally we get to the bottom of it. Yeah, well, we didn't really, but finally we get some kind of fucking statement on it in February 2023. That doesn't seem like a very, very efficient progress. So what was the cause of the hold-up from July 2022 to February 2023, right? Right? Because somehow someone's been given 6 fucking months. 6 months, yeah? To come up with an explanation of why their samples had what they had in them. Now, this is very, very interesting. Let me see if I can find the very, very interesting date here. I'm going to try and find it in a document. But apparently, according to this, and this is very, very interesting, it states that in January, listen, here it is, it's right here. Yeah, George C says it must be all them postal strikes. Listen to this. Listen to this. WBC have thrown you little breadcrumbs here, right? It was not until early January of 2023 that the WBC Results Management Unit was able to undertake the full substantive analysis of Mr. Benn's arguments and defences. This man had an adverse finding on the 25th of July, 2022. It was not until early January of 2023 that the WBC Results Management Unit was able to undertake the full substantive analysis of Mr. Benn's arguments and defences. Listen to this. And they started providing key information in February of 2023. That's very interesting, isn't it? Do you not find that interesting? Kind of, you know, you listen to that and then you hear what did Robert Smith of the British Boxing Board of Control say in his recent interview with Simon Jordan on Talk Sport? Did he not say that he'd had no explanation? In fact, we'll go to the British Boxing Board of Control statement in just a minute. But they said they are still waiting for any kind of explanation as to how this man has had this many adverse findings in this period of time. Well, what the WBC is saying here, again, I'm not accusing anybody, I'm just giving my opinion. My opinion of what the WBC is saying here is that quite simply, despite the fact that Mr. Benn had a problem with an adverse finding in July of 2022, it wasn't until January of 2023 until he came up with some kind of fucking explanation of why that happened. Very, very interesting. What do you guys think about that? Very, very interesting. So the WBC seem to be quite keen to make it clear that this 6-month hold-up, basically, I read this, this is just my opinion, right? This is just my opinion. The WBC seem to be saying here, listen, see this fucking 6-month hold-up? It ain't us. That's what it seems like to me. I could be wrong on that, but WBC seem to be saying here, yo, you know this 6-month hold-up? Ain't nothing to do with us. We've been waiting for this fucking shit. We've been waiting for this so-called explanation for 6 months, and we got it on January. That's my opinion. Right. Shall we talk about chicken eggs? This is absolutely unbelievable. So, after the argument about WADA laboratory, after the argument about laboratory contamination was thrown out, we are now on to this. All right, this is where it comes from, and this is the key, isn't it? Like, this is the key. I can't believe. Have I got the study? I have the study here. Can you believe it? It all comes down to this. This is what seems to have done the trick, right? So, laboratory contamination of a dope test was thrown out by the WBC. It looks like attempt number 2 was this, all right? This is an article, okay? And this article speculates, all right, that if you're a farmer and you give hens clomiphene or clomid in an effort to help them produce more eggs or produce eggs faster, okay? That clomid can be in the eggs and the chicken meat that have been produced by said chicken. So if you are a farmer, okay, if you are a farmer and you decide to give your chickens and your hens clomid in an attempt to increase egg production, okay, because it's a business, there is scientific evidence, as per this study, to suggest that clomiphene can reside in the resultant eggs and in the resultant meat, okay, of said chicken, okay? And thus, because of that, there is research undergoing, and it's currently ongoing, there is research ongoing as to the implications of this for dope testing in sport, okay? This, it might not be this particular study, but it's this kind of study, all right? This kind of study, it seems to be the kind of study that Conor Benn's lawyers may have picked up on, right? May have picked up on, and may have been part of the evidence that was sent to the WBC to say, look, it is possible that somebody who is eating chicken breast or thigh or consumed eggs that have come from a chicken that was given clomiphene by the farmer, all right, in an attempt to increase egg production, could potentially reside in said chicken meat and eggs, and could potentially lead to you being flagged on some kind of test. I tell you what, I actually read the abstract of this, and there was something that was very, very interesting, and I could be completely wrong on this. Very, very wrong on this. I can't find this. Here we go. And it's involving this line here. Now stay with me. I'm not a scientist. I didn't even pass GCSE science. But just stay with me in a sec, right? Because I think, why are they going with eggs? What is the significance of them going with eggs instead of chicken breast, right? Let me ask you guys a question. Press 1 if you agree with me, press 2 if you disagree with me. Wouldn't it make more sense to just say he was eating a lot of chicken breast in the run-up here to the fight instead of eggs, innit? Do you not think, press 1 if you agree with me, don't you think chicken breast and thigh is a bit more believable than just consumption of eggs? I could be completely wrong, right? Because, you know, bodybuilders and people that are trying to gain weight and, you know, this kind of thing, and people who are trying to build muscle, innit? They swear by chicken breast, don't they? They eat loads and loads of tons of chicken breast. I mean, some of them also have raw eggs and stuff. But I would have thought chicken breast would have been much more believable. But it's so interesting. This could be completely inconsequential. But what this study actually shows, right, is that when they tested chicken breast 6 days after, right? So what they did was they looked at the date of the last dose of clomiphene that was given to a hen or a chicken, right? Whatever. And then they checked its chicken breast for how much clomiphene was left in it. Here's the key part. 6 days after the last dose, tissue clomiphene concentrations fell below the LOQ, which I think is the limit of quantification. Basically, what this says to me, and I could be completely wrong, but it says that basically after 6 days, or it gives me the impression that after 6 days, of a chicken being given clomiphene, the amount of clomid that will be found in a chicken breast is not even quantifiable. Not even quantifiable. Brian Burke's got it straight away. There's probably an argument that the clomid shows up more in eggs. That's what it seems like to me, Brian Burke. Do you not find that interesting? I always find that interesting. Why would you not blame chicken breast? And I wonder if it's something to do with this. The actual research shows, and I could be wrong on this, this is my opinion. My opinion of what this abstract says is actually that after 6 days, the amount of clomid that's found in chicken breast is barely quantifiable compared to the amount that's found with eggs. So I wonder if that's the reason. If that's the reason. But George C says, looks like the concentration found in thigh meat is almost 5 times higher than in breast meat. Okay, it's interesting. So I don't know. I wonder if that's the reason why the focus was on eggs and not the meat. I could be wrong on that. What do you think, George C? George C, what do you think about that? I wonder if that's the reason why there was the focus on chicken eggs rather than on actual chicken meat, right? Why they're focusing so much on the amount of eggs eaten, because the research suggests, or the research might not be favourable to eating chicken meat, because the research might suggest that actually after about a week, the amount of clomage, that's found in a chicken breast is fucking next to nothing. So maybe that would be harder to sort of convince somebody of. But anyway, it's interesting. Listen, let me get to the point. If chicken eggs are the reason why, you right, this man has had an adverse finding, press 1 if you agree with me on this and press 2 if you disagree. Where did these eggs come from? Who is the farmer? Where do they supply to? And why is the farmer putting clomid in chicken eggs? Because according to this article, it's illicit, meaning it's not legal. Now let me know about that. Let me know if that's true or not true. But look, few reports exist on clomiphene's illicit use in the farming industry to increase the egg production rate of laying hens. So that gives me the impression that clomiphene being given to hens is not standard procedure at all. It's pretty far from standard procedure. It's basically fucking illicit. Illicit. What's the meaning of illicit? Forbidden. So where does this chicken come from? Where do these eggs come from? Does that make sense? Because to me, what it looks like is you've got a farmer somewhere in the UK who is illicitly giving chickens or hens something that they're not supposed to be given. And it's contaminating the food that people eat. Wow. This seems like something that the authorities need to investigate. Press 1 if you agree with me, press 2 if you disagree with me. Do you not think that if the WBC are willing to accept this explanation, do you not think that somebody in the UK needs to do an investigation into where are these eggs and where the fuck are these eggs coming from? Because allegedly there's some farmer in the UK. That's what the allegation would be. The allegation is that there's a farmer in the UK that is illicitly giving chickens clomid. And then that clomid is ending up in the systems of people who are consuming the chicken. That definitely sounds like something for the authorities to investigate. Just like they investigated when Tyson Fury came up with the fucking wild boar excuse. Do you remember that? That wild boar, the wild boar excuse from Tyson Fury. Do you remember they tracked down the farmer? Do you remember they had to track down the farmer? Do you remember that? They had to track down the farmer involved. That's interesting. I wonder if during these BBOC UCAN investigations, I wonder if we'll get to find out who is the farmer that's providing these eggs. Wouldn't you like to know? Guys, would you like to know if the eggs that you're eating have got fucking clomid in them? They shouldn't be in there. Listen, let me tell you this. It should be very, very interesting. It should be relatively easy to find out. Richard George C. Let me know if I'm wrong here. This is the code and practice for the welfare of laying hens and pullets. From the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. You know you can't just give fucking chickens any old shit during breeding, right? Do you know that? Let's go to page 37. You think you can just, some random farmer, can just turn around and start fucking giving hens fucking clomid? Or fucking randomly. This is interesting. Look at this, look. Quickly. And then it'll be done. If I can find this. Here we go. Breeding procedures. Listen to this. And these are the breeding procedures, right? So these are the government guidelines on breeding, right? Authorized veterinary medicinal products should be used for the animals specified and should be administered according to the manufacturer's instructions. Quite simply, let me go another way. If you look at this, Annex 1, all right? These are regulations and legislation about what you can give poultry in a farm and what you can't. And quite simply here, there's several articles of legislation, all right? And these articles of legislation, I'm not going to go through it now, you have to take my word for it, basically make it clear that you have to, all right? You have to note down and keep a record of what medicine that you're giving these things and where it comes from, quite simply. So what's my point? My point is the following. If the WBC are willing to accept this explanation, and if the UKAD and the British Boxing Board of Control are willing to accept this explanation, then there definitely needs to be some kind of investigation into who supplied these eggs, who is the farmer of these eggs, where these eggs are coming from. I mean, how many professional boxers are there in Essex? I can think of loads. I can think of lots of professional boxers from a particular gym in the Essex area. Hint, hint, hint. How many professional boxers do we have in Essex? And what are the chances that they all eat eggs from the same place? Or where are they getting these eggs? What I'm trying to ascertain is how many other boxers in the Essex area, how many other professional boxers in the Essex area are walking around right now with Clomid in their system because they're getting eggs from a place that is putting things in chicken that they're not supposed to. Can you see where we're going now? That's how stupid this is. And I know maybe people think, oh, I'm going a bit too far. Maybe I am. But I'm trying to drill it into you how fucking deep the rabbit hole goes. How stupid this is. Because what's even more stupid, right? What's even more stupid than me actually displaying, the code of practice for laying welfare, for welfare of hens and chickens. What's even more stupid of me doing that is somebody accepting an explanation of fucking chicken eggs, being the cause, for multiple adverse findings in tests without any sort of sufficient evidence to go through that. So that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in where these eggs are coming from. If you're a professional fighter in the Essex area, you must be shitting your pants, must you not? Press 1 if you agree with me. If you're a professional boxer in the Essex area, you must be absolutely shitting yourself. I'd be on the phone to Conor Benn right now saying, Conor, where did you get them damn eggs from? Because I don't want anything to do with them eggs. Would you? If you're a professional athlete and somebody was supplying dodgy eggs in your area that had Clomid in them and was failing tests because of dodgy eggs, you're telling me you wouldn't want to know where those fucking eggs came from? It's going to be very, very interesting. See, the difference is UKAD and the British Boxing Board of Control, they operate on a completely different level to the WBC, you see. And my fear is they're going to ask for things like receipts. They're going to ask for receipts. They're going to look to speak to the farmers involved. They're going to look to speak to the authorities. I think they're going to do a lot more digging than the WBC would, wouldn't they? Wouldn't they? What do you think? They're going to ask to see things like meal receipts. When Canelo Alvarez tested positive for clenbuterol, I believe Canelo Alvarez actually produced restaurant receipts as part of the investigation into him. He actually produced receipts. I'd be interested to see if UKAD and the British Boxing Board of Control, mainly UKAD, I'd be amazed if they didn't ask for receipts, proof that these eggs were purchased, proof that eggs were purchased in such a quantity that would lead to an adverse finding in a test. And I think they want to know which fucking farm this shit came from. What do you guys think about that? And what's the reason I'm bringing that up? I wonder, and this is just my opinion, I wonder if that's the reason why UKAD and the British Boxing Board of Control have not been supplied this evidence yet. I just wonder. Does that make sense? I wonder if that's the reason why the British Boxing Board of Control and UKAD, as far as I'm aware, have not seen any evidence yet. They have not received any explanation. The WBC have received the 270-page document, right? But the British Boxing Board of Control have not, despite requesting it for months. Why is that? Is that because UKAD will investigate this X claim a lot more thoroughly than the WBC will? What do you guys think about that? Yes or no? Do you think that could be... I could be wrong. Richard, let me know if I'm still legally within bounds. But do you think that could be the reason why the WBC has been supplied with this 270-page document about chicken eggs, but the British Boxing Board of Control have not been, as despite requesting it a million times? Do you think that might possibly, I could be wrong, but do you think it's within the realms of possibility that somebody might be concerned that that document might find its way to UCAD, who might actually do some actual investigation into it? Like, try and find out where these fucking eggs came from. Like, actually try and find out where these fucking eggs came from. I wonder, innit? Makes you wonder. This is the statement from the British Boxing Board of Control. The British Boxing Board of Control is aware that the WBC has considered 2 positive findings in relation to Mr. Conor Benn, who at the time the relevant samples were taken in 2022 was a licence holder with the British Boxing Board of Control. Just to make you aware, the reason why the British Boxing Board of Control are stressing that is because, right, as per Simon Jordan's interview with Robert Smith, right, as per Simon Jordan's interview with Robert Smith of the BBBOC, when the BBBOC were informed that Conor Benn had an adverse finding, they received a phone call from his lawyers to say, this doesn't involve you, this is not a UCAD test failure, you basically don't need to be involved in this. And the British Boxing Board of Control have disagreed, and they have said he was a licence holder at the time the samples were taken, so we are involved. And that's the reason why they're stressing it in this statement, okay? Because allegedly, according to Robert Smith, Conor Benn's lawyers phoned up the British Boxing Board of Control and told them, you don't need to investigate this, or this doesn't concern you, because this is not a UCAD test. It continues. The British Boxing Board of Control has not been party to the review conducted by the WBC and has not been provided with sight of any evidence submitted on Mr. Benn's behalf. That's where it stands. That's today, 22nd of February, 2023. How long have the British Boxing Board of Control been asking for an explanation of why these substances were found in this man's urine? How long? They've been asking. I believe they've been asking for many months. Publicly, they've been asking for weeks. You've all seen a tweet from Conor Benn. My lawyers will be in touch. Well, it seems like the lawyers have not produced any form of explanation, does it? What would you say about that? Would you say that's a fair comment or an unfair comment? I'm just trying to find the video of Eddie Hearn saying recently in the last couple of weeks. What did he say? The WBC, the British Boxing Board of Control, had never wanted to investigate. I'm trying to find the link to that because that was absolutely hilarious. But I'm trying to find it. But I'll find it eventually. Maybe they changed the title of the video. But I believe he recently claimed in a video that they have never really wanted to investigate. Well, I can tell you the opposite. They have been asking for this for weeks. At least, maybe months. And they haven't received it. I won't go through the entire statement, okay? But it basically says that there are multiple adverse findings, and today's WBC statement only tackles one adverse finding. And this is the key part, and we'll leave it at this. The UK anti-doping rules make clear what conduct constitutes an anti-doping rule violation as defined in those rules, and specifically set out the circumstances in which violations can be committed by way of strict liability. That is the most important part of the document, and I'll tell you why. The UK anti-doping rules make clear what conduct constitutes an anti-doping rule violation as defined in those rules, and specifically set out the circumstances in which such violations can be committed by way of strict liability. My reading of that is very, very simple. They don't give a shit about intention. Simple as that. They don't give a shit about intention. That, to me, let me know if I'm right, reads like the UK anti-doping rules, which come from WADA, the WADA code, specifically state that you are responsible for what's in your system, and that nobody needs to prove that you intended to do anything. So all this bullshit about, did you intend to do it? Did you intentionally or knowingly take it? Is absolutely fucking irrelevant. Irrelevant in the World Anti-Doping Agency Code. It's irrelevant. Very, very simple. If it's in your system, then you do time for it. It's that fucking simple. You've heard Conor Benn say it in the beginning of this interview. Check your supplements. You've heard Conor Benn say it in his own words. Check your supplements. My nutritionist check everything. My nutritionist even check my vitamin C tablets. Right? So, there you go. The British Boxing Board of Control basically come out here and basically said that, effectively what Richard said, that the WBC ruling means nothing to anybody other than the WBC. Does this mean I have hope that the British Boxing Board of Control are going to come to a satisfactory conclusion? No, absolutely not. They'll probably fold. I've got absolutely no faith in the British Boxing Board of No Control as Simon Jordan takes it. But it is what it is. If anybody has any questions, ask them now or forever hold your peace. 143 in the chat. I bet you there's only 43 likes. If people want to hit the like button, I'm putting my ass on the line delivering this to you today. I've tried to do it in a very, very specific manner. I apologise for the lack of humour. All right, I don't know how you guys felt about this episode today. I apologise for the lack of humour. I apologise for the lack of the. We didn't even play the chicken song for this one, did we? But this time, maybe there'll be time for that in the future. But I wanted to try and be as specific as I can as possible. How do you feel in the chat quickly? Do you feel that what the WBC have ruled today proves that Conor Benn is innocent? How do you feel about it? Like I said before, I'm not accusing Conor Benn of doing anything. Right? I don't know if I made that clear. I've never accused Conor Benn of knowingly or intentionally taking any performance enhancing drugs. I am simply commenting, on the news and giving my opinions as I see it. Well, how do you guys feel about that? How do you guys feel about Eddie Hearn? The latest statement from Eddie Hearn and Matchroom is the following. Eddie Hearn has stated that they will now look to resume Conor Benn's career with a fight April, May, June, following the WBC's ruling today. Of course, they have known for ages what the WBC are going to say. We already knew that the WBC were going to reinstate him back in the rankings weeks ago. So we already knew that. The only question about Conor Benn is whether he'll be able to fight in the UK or not. Not whether he'll fight again. We know he's going to fight again. So it is what it is. Hearn said he would like Benn to fight in the UK under the British Boxing Board of Control, but separate British Boxing Board of Control UK investigation is still ongoing. Listen, if you want Conor Benn to be able to fight in the UK under the British Boxing Board of Control, a good start, right? A good start would be to provide the BBOC with what they're asking for, which is some evidence, or some form of explanation as to how this stuff has gone into his system. The failed tests were in July. It's now February. Basically, it's now March. And the British Boxing Board of Control have still received no evidence. So I would say to Eddie Hearn, if you want Conor Benn to fight under the BBOC, might be an idea to actually provide them with that 270-page document. All right. And if a 270-page document says he's innocent, then let's all have a look at it. Let's see it. What's the secrecy? What is the secrecy behind this document? What's the secrecy behind it? And let me ask you another question as well before we go. Eddie Hearn's been saying about this evidence that Conor Benn's going to come up with. In fact, Tony Bellew's name is also in this article as well. Look, recently, former Cruiserweight World Champion Tony Bellew claimed that the information that Benn provided had everyone scared. This is Tony Bellew quoted in Boxing Social. The information Benn provided has everyone scared. Can I ask you a question quickly? Do you think that the information that Conor Benn has provided, basically that increased consumption of chicken eggs is the reason why these adverse findings have been found? Would you agree with the views of Tony Bellew and Eddie Hearn that this information would have everyone scared and that this information will give people sleepless nights? How do you feel about that? Because don't forget, for months and weeks, we've been told, wait till you see the evidence. Wait till you see the evidence. Don't judge Conor Benn until you see the evidence, right? Do you remember? We've been told for months, haven't we? Don't judge anybody until you've seen the evidence. Well, now you've had a snippet of the evidence. Has it changed your opinion? How do you feel about the fact that Conor Benn has looked Eddie Hearn? I've got to be careful what I say. How do you feel about the fact that somebody has looked Eddie Hearn in the eye and said, mate, the reason why he tested positive is because of chicken eggs. And he, with a straight face, stepped foot on Boxing Social and said, wait till you hear this evidence. Don't judge, mate. Wait till you hear it. When you hear this evidence, When you hear the evidence and the scientists, it's going to make everything clear. Do you remember that? I hope the apologies are louder than the disrespect. Who said that? Was that Conor Benn? Remember this evidence we were supposed to hear? This evidence. How do you feel about the evidence that's been given? Do you feel that the evidence that's been given is satisfactory? Let me know. Drop me a comment. See Harley here, who's one of Conor Benn's lawyers. Harley's actually the one who was one of the first ones to bring up the chicken egg thing. So people are giving me credit. But obviously, people know I've been talking about the chicken eggs defense for months on this channel because we knew it was coming. But we knew it was coming thanks to Harley here, because Harley, I think, is like I said before, one of the legal team for you know who. There's a reason why Harley hasn't been banned from this channel, despite talking absolute nonsense for the best part of about a 12-month period. It's because occasionally he does come up with some very useful nuggets of information. He says, my main concern: why did VADA test positive and UCAD didn't? The answer to that is very obvious. And I can't say any more than that. This is an open and shut case, mate. It really is. It's an open and shut case. Why did VADA test positive and UCAD didn't? Well, I can think of why that is pretty easily. Simple as that, mate. Simple as that. But that's my opinion. Harley says, I support Ben and give him the benefit of the doubt, hoping for the best. Listen, Harley, it's up to you. Listen, like I said before, if you believe that chicken eggs is what caused this, that's fine. That's down to you. I'm not the judge, jury, and the executioner. If you feel that Conor Benn has supplied sufficient evidence to prove his innocence, then that's down to you. You can go and buy a ticket to his next fight. Whether that will be in the UK or Abu Dhabi, we'll see shortly. Peter De Freitas, the living legend himself, is in the chat. He says, next, Conor Benn will now sue the British Boxing Board of Control for restraint of trade, which means that they are stopping him from earning a living. Nigel Benn did it years ago to Frank Warren and won in the High Court. It's interesting, isn't it? It's very, very interesting. What will happen next? One thing I will quickly say before I go is some of the stuff that Eddie Hearn's been saying recently about the BBOC have taken ages. I'm sure you guys have all seen the videos of Eddie Hearn. He's attacking the British Boxing Board of Control, and he's saying the British Boxing Board of Control have known for months and months and months about this failed test, and they haven't done anything. You can kind of see the sentiment in here. Look, Eddie Hearn hits back. What about the British Boxing Board of Control's conduct? They knew about Benn test. What do you guys think about this? And I'll leave it at this. I don't doubt that the British Boxing Board of No Control are an absolute walking fuck up. Like, I'm not saying that the British Boxing Board of Control are innocent in all this, right? I'm not saying that, their policies and procedures are the most efficient. But what do you think about this? What can the British Boxing Board of Control do until they have gone through the proper processes and procedures? Does that make sense? What about the British Boxing Board of Control conduct? They knew about Benn's test, right? But when they knew about Benn's test, they made a request for information. That request for information has not been fulfilled. How are the British Boxing Board of Control supposed to come to some kind of proper resolution without the information that they've requested? Press 1 if you think that's a fair statement, or press 2 if you think that's an unfair statement. And this is why I've been critical about Eddie Hearn, in this sort of a drug testing scenario from the get-go, because it does seem to me, right, from looking at the kind of some of the comments that he's making comments blaming the British Boxing Board of Control, saying why aren't they acting? They've known about this test for months, right? But I wonder if there's a process that the British Boxing Board of Control have to go through, right, before they can act. Makes sense. There's like a procedure or a process that the British Boxing Board of Control have to go through before they can act. And part of that process will be, why did you fail this fucking test? Or why did you have an adverse finding? If somebody then would say, we're not going to give you any information, and the British Boxing Board of Control then have to spend time and money trying to track down and find that explanation, could that be an explanation as to why it's taken them so long to deal with this case? See, these aren't the words and actions about somebody who really cares about ridding the sport of doping. All right? Those aren't the actions of somebody who really cares about, cleaning up the sport from drugs, right? This is lawyers talk. This is politicians talk. This, to me, is the talk of somebody who is just seeking to muddy the waters. And my analysis of Eddie Hearn, the things he said during this whole test, and let me know if you think I'm wrong. How do you feel about Eddie Hearn's role in this? My opinion of Eddie Hearn's role in this is that, and this is my opinion, he has sought at every turn to muddy the waters. That's my opinion. Well, how do you guys feel? Do you think that's fair or unfair? My opinion of it is that he has, at every single step, sought to put information out there that will cast doubt, information out there that will muddy the waters, and lots of deflection. And that's all we've seen, isn't it, through this process, isn't it? And that's what, let me end it with this, you know. People say, oh, what about Tyson Fury? I've never believed Tyson Fury was a clean athlete. I don't believe any of these elite level boxers are clean, because I'm not stupid, right? So coming at me with the whole Tyson Fury, what about Tyson Fury thing is, well, that's simple. I never believed Tyson Fury was a clean athlete anyway. I don't believe any of the guys at the top are 100% clean. That's my belief. That's my belief. I'm not accusing anybody of anybody. That's my belief. I'm not entitled to anybody. Who I am interested in is people, right, who are showing inconsistent opinions when it comes to doping. I.e., let's bury Jerome Miller and let's accuse Jerome Miller and let's talk about someone's going to die, and let's compare people who fail drugs tests and basically compare them with murderers, right? Which is what we've seen Eddie Hearn do in his Sun article, haven't we? We've seen Eddie Hearn compare people who fail drugs tests or have adverse findings for drugs tests. We've heard him equate them with murderers, right? I've never done that, yeah? So what we're doing is we're looking at the conduct of people who've equated other fighters who have failed tests with murderers, but then have seemingly and miraculously made a complete 180 U-turn of their opinion when the situation seems to suit them. And all I will say is, if you look at the language that Eddie Hearn used during when Canelo Alvarez had an adverse finding, or if you look at the kind of language that Eddie Hearn used when Jerome Miller had an adverse finding, and you compare it to the kind of language that he's using now, it's almost like it's two completely different people. Because when Canelo Alvarez failed a drugs test, he jumped on wherever it was and said, people will always see Canelo as a drugs cheat. That's what he said. People always see Canelo as a drugs cheat. We didn't hear anything from Eddie Hearn about wait for the evidence. Did we hear that? Wait for the evidence. He's got evidence that's going to give people sleepless nights. Did we hear anything about that? We didn't hear anything about evidence that was going to give people sleepless nights. We didn't hear anything about scientists or anything. We didn't hear anything. So complete 180, complete U-turn in my opinion. And I think, like I said before, his reputation's come out. In tatters, and it is what it is, and we'll have to wait and see. And now Harley's now accusing Tyson Fury of taking performance-enhancing drugs as the reason for holding off the Usyk fight. Bloody hell, Harley's on an absolute roll today. Listen, Harley, I don't believe. It's my belief. You know what my belief is. Dylan Long says, I accept the science, but without an actual sample, it's not evidence. 270 pages, for fuck's sake. That's a PhD thesis. Dylan Long has nailed this. Exactly, Dylan Long. There is no evidence. There's no data. Simple as that. Nobody's seen any evidence. Nobody's seen any data. What we've seen so far, right, is a study, right? We've seen a study, which I'm trying to display on the screen. We've seen a study, right? What we've seen is a study, and what we've seen is a theory that is possible. But what we haven't seen is any hard evidence to suggest, I have a stammer, to suggest that this study applies to Conor Benn. And again, I would say there's a reason, in closing, there is a reason why this 270-page document, right, has gone to the WBC and it hasn't gone to the British Boxing Board of Control. In my opinion, there's a reason for that. What that reason is, I will leave it up to you. But I believe there's a reason for that. MC Dry Elbow says, Any commission worth their salt won't sanction Benn fighting until the BBOC have concluded their investigation. Can I present to you Conor Benn versus Manny Pacquiao live from Abu Dhabi? No one gives a... Listen, you know what's going to happen. Conor Benn, Manny Pacquiao. Or Conor Benn versus Chris Van der Heerden 2, live from Abu Dhabi. Let's have a look here. Mark Zola says, I hope these Essex boxers ain't had too many pancakes. Go through some final comments. Saul says, Hearn is going to try and sue the British board. Things are going to get interesting and personal. I think things are going to get interesting and very, very personal. At the minute, the board are holding their ground, aren't they? But for how long they'll hold their ground, let's see. But so far, I have to say, it's not looking very, very good. You On About Mate says the 270 pages didn't clear him. Sounds like it was a food diary he could have knocked up in an hour. And blah, blah, blah. Right. Let's all go and watch the Champions League. I don't know what's going to happen with me and YouTube after this. Because, like I said, we're treading on dangerous ground here. But Manchester City and Leipzig awaits us, as does Inter Milan and Porto. Shout out to all my Liverpool fans out there. Shout out to my Premier League fans out there. Apparently for about 15 minutes, between the hours of 8 o'clock and 8:15 yesterday, the Premier League was absolutely leagues above La Liga. Until Real Madrid went and scored 5 goals in Anfield and absolutely took Liverpool to the sword. So make it out what you will. It is what it is. Good luck to Manchester United, who will be at home against Barcelona Football Club on Thursday, which is tomorrow. In a game they should win, seeing as they got no Dembele, no Pedri, no Gavi, etc, etc. Brian Burke. That's a game you should be winning, seeing as Barcelona have basically 3 of their 5 best players out for that game. So if you don't, I will be coming down on you like a ton of bricks. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other.